You're listening to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade on the LONGBOX CRUSADE NETWORK. Hello and welcome to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade. I'm your host, Jared Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist, and I will be taking you on an adventure with me as I index all 34 issues of 1983's The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones by Marvel Comics. On this episode, we will look at issue number 3. Issue 3 is cover dated March 1983. It is written by Denny O'Neil and penciled by Gene Day and Richard Howell. The inks are by Mel Candido and Danny Bulanati. The letterer is Janice Chang, the colorist is Bob Sharon, and the editor is Luis Jones. Let's get into a cover description. The cover is drawn by Richard Howell and inked by Danny Bulanati. The Marvel Comics Group banner is light blue with black letters, and Indiana Jones stands pistol ready in his light blue corner box. The title logo is white with blue highlights, and the main action depicts Indiana Jones driving a Jeep through a fence while towing a cannon. Soldiers in the foreground scatter from the chaos, and soldiers in the background fire rifles at Indy. And now for a quick story synopsis. Picking up where Indy left off last issue, which is Dr. Jones floating to Earth in a parachute, Indiana lands amidst some chaos. Some backwater lynch mob is trying to hang a young man, and Indy intervenes to save this young man to learn he's the grandson of a 400-year-old druid, for lack of a better word. The druid has developed an elixir that grants him immortality, and somehow Indiana and the old druid run afoul of a local army regiment, even though Indy is trying to save them from a rock slide that the druid intends to initiate. And if you're confused, so am I. But eventually Dr. Jones absconds with that army cannon and topples the rocks in a different direction, I think, saving the military encampment, but cutting off the druid from his elixir. But the druid isn't too upset, and he and his grandson set out to find another source. All right, folks, let's get excited to talk about some Indiana Jones. I have with me here in the Temple of the Longbox that's buried deep underneath of Longbox Studios, the man, the myth, the legend. Spoiler alert, we're going to be able to give halvesies on this issue. I don't think we're actually scoring anything, but if we did, we could give halvesies. Welcome to the Temple of Longbox. It is Joe November. Welcome back to the network, sir.
How's it going? Good to see everybody. Yes. Virtually.
Virtually, of course. Well, we're doing good Annie, in the Temple Longbox. Now, Joe is here for two reasons. Number one, as you guys know, this is episode 3. I have played the heck out of his awesome jam that he made for the show. It's so good. By now, sir. Joe will know that he did one that's just instrumental and one that has movie clips in it. I do the instrumental for the intro, and then the outro, I play the whole, I think I play the whole one with the movie clips every time.
Oh, nice.
Because it's so good. So thank you for making that for us. Okay, that's step one.
Yes, sir.
And I only had to bug him for it for, I don't know, 4 years or something like that.
It was quite a while. It was quite a while.
Actually, no. Behind the scenes, I always go to Joe. Hey, I got an idea for a new show. And Joe's like, but I always tell him, I'm like, this is a back burner project because Joe's doing. Just for those of you who don't know, he's doing a lot of like beats, and he does beat competitions on like Twitch and other live platforms. And he doesn't just do them; he wins them a lot. And we're very proud to have Joe on our staff here. So
thank you.
Yes, stay tuned at the end of the show. As always, we'll find out from Joe where you can find him on social medias, and more importantly, all of his music. I told you there's 2 reasons I had him on. 1, this is very much a thank you for making an awesome beat. 2, I know Joe's a big Indiana Jones fan.
Yes, I am. Yeah. I love Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, that whole mythos. Movies are great, some better than others, some very worse than others.
I won't make you reveal it. I think we can all agree that the first 3 are really good.
Yes.
And we'll just leave it at that. We don't have to think about anything else. But yeah, I know that Joe and I have been friends for years now, and
long time.
Yeah, I know he loves Indiana Jones. Now, my question to you, Joe, as we get into the further adventures of Indiana Jones number 3, I know you love the movies, and I know you know them front to back. We've quoted them to each other over the years. Did you ever dabble in these Marvel comics back when you were a kid?
Not when I was a kid, but when I was an adult, I definitely read a few. What was interesting about this particular one is that it follows timeline-wise so closely to Lost Ark, and it even has a reference to it within Lost Ark, which I thought was really cool, how they kind of expanded the continuity of the Indiana Jones storyline and what else he was into, before I guess he got into The Last Crusade, because I'm sure this is between those two movies.
Yeah, it is. It's between Raiders and, it's between Raiders and Temple of Doom, but Temple of Doom's a prequel so it gets confusing, right? Which, while I'm on this topic, it always bugs me that in Raiders, he's like, oh, it's like a Sunday school story that people tell, I don't believe in this hocus pocus. And then they do Temple of Doom as a prequel. I'm like, you saw a man get his heart pulled out of his chest and still beating. So don't tell me you don't. You got cursed with the blood of collies. So don't tell me you don't believe in this hocus pocus.
Yeah.
It's the whole problem with prequels.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That has nothing to do with anything. So Joe found the Marvel comics later in life, and he discovered what we've discovered as we started our journey here. Yeah, this is definitely post Raiders. This is very much in the same vein as the Marvel Star Wars books. When they started doing them, they only had the first movie to go on. So it's those first ones, man, are wild. There's a big green rabbit named Jackson who is a part of the story. Like, they didn't know. They're guessing. So here we are, and number 3, we've wrapped up with issues 1 and 2, the Gold Idols storyline. I know it had a better name than that, but the one where they had actual gold people that had been dipped in gold. Yeah, and Joe may not know this because he wasn't here for 1 and 2. The first thing I was struck by in 3 was that it is an immediate follow-on. Like, he is coming out of the plane that he jumped out of at the end of 2. But before we even get to the story, the folks already heard me discuss the cover and tell you what it's kind of all about. I did my best to describe it. Now I have to go to Joe and say, before we open up, get into the story, let's start with the first things first. Take a look at that cover. Tell me what you think.
Pretty boring cover, if you ask me. There's not a whole lot going on.
not getting maybe a halvesy, I guess.
No, he is getting shot at.
That, I think, is the most exciting aspect of the cover. There's an element of danger.
Yeah, he's definitely in the midst of an action sequence, high stakes. Looks like there's a purpose for where he's going, but he's being interrupted by evildoers or bad guys, and that's kind of like the clue to kind of open up the book and see what exactly is going on and why is he in this situation.
Spoiler alert, that's not going to help a lot, but I will give it kudos, Joe. I will give it kudos because I always respect a cover that depicts something that kind of happens in the book. In this moment where he steals the Jeep with the cannon, and I think he gets shot at, I think this is legit. The art overall, just, as an artist myself, I think, the vehicles and all the stuff is pretty good. The layout's not bad with the foreground and the background. We've talked a lot about how Indy's drawn. And I'm looking for your thoughts on this. And while you're thinking, I got to give you my theory. I haven't proven this, but I bet a solid amount of money that I'm right. I think that Marvel got the rights to do Indiana Jones comics, but they did not get the likeness rights for Harrison Ford. Because nowhere in the further adventures does he look spot on Ford. Now, when they do the movie adaptations, they get the rights. He looks like Harrison Ford in the movie adaptations that Marvel does. They did adaptations for 1, 2, and 3, and it's Harrison Ford all the way. But when you get into further adventures, it's Indiana Jones. I mean, they convey that, but it's not necessarily Harrison Ford. I'm not super excited about the way he's drawn on this cover, but you get to talk. I don't talk. What do you got, Joe?
I would agree with that. If it didn't have Indiana Jones, the actual lettering of Indiana Jones, it could just be anybody that's being shot at with a hat on and a jacket. It really doesn't give a good indication that that's Harrison Ford's character. It's like, someone dreamed about Indiana Jones, and that in that dream, that's just exactly what he looks like.
It's in Dreamana Jones, ladies and gentlemen.
It's not quite right, Indiana Henry Jones.
It's the Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Just 1 calorie of Indiana Jones.
It's the, you go to the restaurant and you're asking for Coke products and they're like, we have Pepsi.
Is the Diet Pepsi okay? No, it's not okay. Well, another thing that Joe, he's getting the short end of the stick on this episode, but it's going to be a fun one to talk about, folks. Another thing that Joe just kind of got hosed on is another thing we talked about. When they started issue 1, they put their A-team on. They put John Byrne on there, legendary artist with his inker, Terry Austin. In fact, Terry Austin himself did the cover of number 1. And Terry Austin, even though he's quote-unquote an inker, he's actually quite a good artist, too. So the book is great, phenomenal looking. It rolls into issue 2. It's once again, it is John Byrne and Terry Austin. And that's how they get you, right? They put the A-team on it, and then they pull those guys. And listen, the guy who drew this cover did a better job than I ever could. I'll give him that. I'll give him that. I'm not better than him. But Marvel's famous for that. Talent, big talent. And then, here comes Joe's episode. Let's dial that down.
Let's bring in the replacements.
Yeah, it really is. And this one just feels, cover to story, just really feels replacement-y.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because the story is by Denny O'Neil. He's a long-time successful comic book writer. Great runs on Batman and stuff like that. But it definitely feels like, to me, and then we're going to let Joe get into everything. My broad brush overview as we roll into the story is it feels like they were like, okay, our big blockbuster 1 and 2 rollout is done. Oh, crap. Issue 3 is done, due in like a week from now. Denny, can you write? Yeah, I guess I'll write something. It feels rushed to me.
It feels very, I don't know, campy. Yeah. And we'll get into the dialogue. I could not get over some of the dialogue. And the interaction between the main characters and the side characters and the accents. Yeah.
It's a lot. Yes, I know the one, specifically what you're talking about.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. So let's get into it. Let's dive into it. Now, first thing I just want to make a note. I just opened it up, and I want to say that I think the splash page art on page 1 by Gene Day is actually quite good. I think that's a much better capture of Indiana Jones.
I would agree. I mean, obviously, I did read 1 and 2, so I have no idea why he decided to jump out of a plane. So that was definitely a mystery to me. And the fact that he's like, somebody's shooting at somebody. Maybe I should have stayed in the plane. It was like, well, why didn't you stay in the plane? Well, I didn't read 1 and 2, so I don't know.
Well, you didn't know that there's like a golden zombie monster that's awakened from the dead, killing people in the plane. I mean,
okay,
you've heard it 1,000 times.
Yeah,
we've all been there.
We've all been there.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating that it picked up right where last issue left off. But on the other hand, I have to remind myself that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg very much base this property off of old cliffhangers, which carry over directly. There's always like, what's going to happen next? And here they were like, literally, this is what happened next.
This is what happened next. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I gave you guys the story rundown earlier. You heard it in the preamble. Behind the curtain, folks, I record this talk I have with Joe or whoever the guest is, and then I do all the other front end stuff post-production. I can't wait until I listen to me explain this story. Joe, I'd love to hear your take on this story. Get as detailed as you like, get as zoomed out as you like.
It feels like a fever dream.
Yes.
That's the best way I can describe it. It's like Indiana Jones jumping out of a plane into some strange land. Could it be the Deep South? I don't know, because the way that people talk is like, wow. They really went overboard. It was very B-movie campy-ish for, the enemies that showed up. And then just the plot premise of someone who, has, long life and they're making elixirs and someone's about to be hanged and he's not the same color as me, but he's going to get hanged anyway. And I was like, why is this happening? Like, what did they do to him? And it was a lot. And then you look at some of the uniforms and some people still think they're, in World War II. And there's just a lot going on in this. And it just feels like they just kind of crammed a lot of story elements together to kind of move the plot along. But it feels very jumbled. It doesn't feel smooth continuity. It doesn't, it's just a lot. And I don't know if it was just bad direction or, like you said, they're just trying to get something done in a week. And the antagonist, the old guy, did he have a name? I think he was just called Grandfather.
The elixir guy.
Yeah, and I think they toned it down, but his racism was pretty bad. You could tell.
Was it? I honestly, it's been a few days since I read it, Joe, so forgive me for lack of detail. I didn't remember that part of it, but
he mentioned something about, May chance would you be a red Indian? Like, really?
Oh yeah. Like, okay,
yeah. Granted, yes, I know he's probably hundreds of years old, and that's how they talk, but you didn't have to say that in a comic book.
I think you'd know one if you saw one. Yeah. That's a weird question in general.
Yeah.
Yes, I got to agree with everything Joe just said. Jumbled is a great word, Joe. It's like, it's too much. It's too much. You've got I guess the locals are trying to hang the grandson of Elixir Dude. And then somehow a World War I regiment is involved. I'm not really sure who the good guys or the bad guys are. It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, it is definitely an interesting read for sure. Now, one thing I will say about it is that it does keep you interested in what's going on. It's not boring, but there's also some elements of... I don't know how to explain it. Like, for the instance, when Indiana Jones was like, hey, I'll use my belt to grab the key from the jail cell. I don't know if that was believable or not.
You call him Dr. Jones.
How long is your belt, dude?
He's been putting on the pounds.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It just, even in the details, it seems jumbled. But you're also right. There's so much going on. It's not boring. It's just leaves you more questions than answers. It's like, I thought it was neat that Indy kind of got a mouthful of the elixir, so he was like had a moment of enhanced strength, but then he didn't. Like, oh wait, the rope's already cut.
Yeah, he's like, I thought I was strong, but nope. Looks like grandson hooked me up, and I didn't even know it. I did think it's funny that he got his ass beat by the old guy.
Oh, that old guy beat Indy's. That's one of the things I kind of like about these Marvel books is they definitely picked up on, especially in the first movie, Raiders. Indy, he doesn't like win a lot of fist fights. He's not James Bond.
Yeah.
Like, we were laughing in an earlier issue, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, where he swings down with a whip and he misses what he wanted to land on. He kind of crashes into a cart and stuff. I'm like, yes, that is Indiana Jones. He's not graceful in any way. How about this? This book came out before Temple of Doom.
Yes.
But I saw something very Temple of Doomish in here, and I bet you did too.
Oh, pray tell. What did you see?
Perhaps a bridge was involved?
Yes. Yes, good point. Good point. Because it definitely brought up a lot of memories from when he was like, I'll see you in hell. He brings up the show. Yeah. But the fact that they were able to survive that by hanging on and using it as like a ladder once they cut one side down, it was like, oh, I guess that's one way to move the plot along.
Yeah, this one is so... For those of you at home who haven't read it, like Joe said, it's so much that I just opened to a random page, or I guess 2 pages really, but on one random page is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels on the next page.
Dang.
They are cramming in the panels here. And again, I think my biggest weirdness with it is I just never really know who to root for. I guess the old man with the elixir is supposed to be a quote unquote villain, but who's he bothering?
Yeah.
Nobody.
And then, whoever the colonel is, Colonel Hannigan, is he the bad guy?
Yeah.
Leading the regiment of troops that are chasing after him. Yeah, it was hard to tell who was worse.
Yeah, and then you've got then there's a lynch mob. Okay, they're bad guys because I don't know why they want. I don't even know why they wanted to lynch the grandson, dude.
That wasn't clear at all.
I don't know.
That wasn't clear at all.
I'm really hoping at the beginning of issue 4, like Indiana Jones was like wakes up, and was like, oh, what a weird dream.
It was like the old Super Mario Brothers 2 effect.
Yes.
Like it was all a dream.
Yes. I read this entire run about a year ago, and that's when I got the idea to do this show. And I'll tell you what, Joe, when I said, hey, I want you on for issue 3, and you're like, cool. And then like you messaged me something about its weirdness. And I was like, well, let me go ahead and reread issue 3. And then as soon as I opened it, I was like, oh, it's this one. Like I remember this one being so bizarre. I won't go so far to say that it's awful. I think the worst thing I can say about it is if you skipped it, you'd be okay. That's about it's a filler issue.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
But I will say this in its plus column, we lost John Byrne on the pencils, but we got Gene Day. And I raved about the opening splash page. And to be honest with you, Gene's work throughout the whole issue is pretty darn good. The art is good. Joe, you feel free to weigh in and maybe what you thought or some of your favorite moments.
I agree with that. Other than, it just wasn't a really good depiction of, Harrison Ford, which we talked about earlier. Maybe they couldn't do it that way. They just wanted to have a representation of the Indiana Jones character. But overall, it definitely kept your interest. It was almost like this was the comic book version of watching Inception, meaning that if you had to pay attention to every single panel, you had to pay attention to every plot device to go through to understand what was going on. Even then, it was still a little bit confusing.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. Indiana Jones taught himself how to shoot that cannon really well, really fast, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's plot armor.
He was on top of things. He really was. But yeah, this is an odd one. Like I said, the worst thing I could say about it is you could skip it and go right to 4, and that'd be fine. But it has a memorable odd things have memorable qualities. So I said I remembered it. Joe, did you have anything else you want to talk about, art or story-wise, in this book?
What caught my interest was at the very end when the grandfather and the grandson, Indiana Jones, are walking up the hill. Then all of a sudden you look at the bottom right and they're like, next, Stonehenge. Like, how did they get to Stonehenge next? Like, what?
I'm still trying to figure out how they got here.
Yeah.
It's like these weird, like you said, like weirdly deep South accents. And I'm here to tell you at the end of the last issue, I'm almost positive he bailed out of that plane somewhere over New York City.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm just like, what?
So he's in Canada?
I don't know. Maybe.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to cheat right now and go back and look. So I see him jumping out of the plane. I don't know if they give you a reference point for where he's at. I don't know where Idlewild is, but I'm going to find out. That's where they took off from. Idlewild Airport got renamed John F. Kennedy International Airport as New York City.
Wow.
That's what it is.
That's crazy.
So I don't know where the hell they flew then. His parachute took him a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that kind of threw me off was, towards the end, when you thought that the old Elixir dude would be upset that Indiana Jones escaped and he wasn't going to, fight anymore. He was just like, I have no reason to fight you anymore. And it's just like, but what was all that stuff before? You were wailing on him.
You beat the crap out of him.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I don't know. Stonehenge, Joe.
Yeah.
Stonehenge. Well, pick it up in Stonehenge. All right. As usual, as we're wrapping this up, another bizarre thing about this one is I feel like it had a lower ad count or maybe just not as many impactful ads. I was flipping through. Joe and I were flipping through before recording, and there's just not a ton of ads. This is the early 80s, so I did spot like a Dungeons & Dragons ad and some of those sort of flea market ads and a couple of house ads. But Joe and I decided of all the ads they had in here that we wanted to talk about MPC's model kit, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons action scenes to take your imagination to a new level. And it's like basically you build these little model kits that you can sort of use to play along with D&D. I think Joe mentioned he'd seen one before. I've never seen one. So where did you see this, Joe? And what do you think of these model kits?
I was at my cousin's house and he had a small one. And that's actually where I got my email address name, the Josephlin, because he was trying to think of a name for me, for my character. And it was from Dungeons and Dragons. playing this type of game and getting involved into the storyline and things like that. But he had a small version of the one that we saw in the ads. It really helped. This is the early 80s, so it's not like we have video games that can really immerse you into the storyline. You had to, really use your imagination. But this helped a lot to move the plot along, to, see what's going on with the storyline, what decisions you make when you roll the dice, and where the twists and turns would be, and, where the dangers are, things like that, to help visually accompany whatever story that you're doing in Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought it was great. I definitely have good memories of it. So it was cool.
That's awesome, man. And I've been emailing Joe at Joseph. I won't give your full email address, Joe. So Steflin is in there for 20 years now. What? Wait, 24? Gosh, 25 years now. And I just now learned that this is where this comes from.
That's where it comes from. Yeah.
Breakthroughs on the show. Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen.
Breaking news.
Is D&D days. Yeah, these model kits are super cool as I look at them. I've never seen one in real life, but yeah, the ad basically has an Orc War set that's 12 by 18 base and a Dungeon Invaders set that looks really cool. It's 12 by 18. And it's just like, I didn't know that you could add a 3-dimensional sort of tabletop to your D&D. I mean, I've seen the more modern ones. In fact, I've bought some of the more modern ones for Pat, the founder of the network, DJ Cristados, because he still likes to play D&D. So I got him like the little metal ones and all. There's like little metal figurines and all this stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
But this is fascinating to me. 1983 cool sets, man. The yard sailor in me wants to find one of these sets like unbuilt,
Yeah, I wonder if they're still around, or if there's any like Dungeons and Dragons conventions where people bring stuff like that, or any other comic book conventions where they do that stuff. And like, I'll go to gaming conventions and I don't see a whole lot of that anymore. Most people just, flat tabletop using, because it could be just because it's a logistical issue. It's a pain to carry around, that type of thing.
Yeah, models break relatively easy. I could see this where this would be something you'd kind of want to build in your like sort of your basement where you play D&D, and you wouldn't take it places. That's a good
exactly.
Point.
Yeah.
I just looked some up on eBay. Just I wanted to know their value these days. And the Orc War kit that we can actually see in the ad, the last one sold on eBay for $100.
Wow.
And I've seen some. They're not completed yet, but it looks like some of the like Dragon Invaders ones are up to $300.
Wow.
Yeah, I figured they'd be pretty valuable because I've been yard sailing for about 24 years now, and I've never seen one out in the wild.
Yeah, nice.
I can't lie to Josephine the cleric over here who has +6 charisma on holy ground.
No, I believe I was a dark elf.
Oh, were you?
I've always been some type of ranged character. That's just been my thing.
Oh, yeah?
Ever since then. Yeah.
I definitely played a cleric back in the day, back in the early 80s, and I was pretty young in the early 80s, as were you. We're about the same age.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So it was my older brother, Jason, who was kind of more into it, and I was just kind of like, all right, I'll be a cleric. Whatever.
Yeah. Where's my heels? I need some heels.
Joe, I just saw on eBay right now, someone sold the print ad as if like to just cut this page out and sold the ad itself for $20.
Well, he wouldn't have put it there if someone wasn't going to buy it.
Somebody paid $20 for this print ad that he probably cut out of a comic not unlike this one.
That's crazy.
Anyways,
we'll see value of nowadays. It's just insane.
It is insane. The things you learn on this program, folks. Well, folks, that is going to be it from the old Temple of Longbox here, deep underground beneath LONGBOX CRUSADE Studios. I definitely want to thank Josephine the Dark Elf, who has a Wolf Rider and +6 charisma. Holy ground for being here with us.
Yeah, don't forget the +8 Constitution.
Oh, I love this stuff, man. Oh, thanks so much for being here, Joe. And now the most important part is you got to tell folks where they can find you and your music, because it's awesome. We're going to hear the Indiana Jones Jam in its full gloriousness here in just a minute. But Joe, tell the folks where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on SoundCloud, Spotify, any of your digital streaming platforms as Joe November. Would love to hear your feedback on any of the music. I do have a couple albums in the queue for this year. Put some nice stuff out there. So looking forward to your feedback and follow me on the socials as well as Joe November, IG, and Facebook, all that good stuff.
Definitely, please do that. Joe is just a absolute godsend for the Longbox Crusade Network. Just about every tune you hear coming in and out of one of our shows is one of his, and it's not even his best work. And it's really good. His best work is out there. He does all kinds of really cool beats. So if you're listening to this and you're into that, definitely check out Joe November and be amazed. Be amazed, folks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. There's not even money changing hands. As usual, you can find me. I'm at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, and Instagram. You can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. And of course, please check out the Longbox Crusade wherever you can find us, which is in most places. If you search Longbox Crusade on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any podcatcher, you're going to find the Longbox Crusade, and we hope that you do. This is one of our short shows, so we don't do the full list of all the Crusaders Club members who support us, but I just want to give a shout out to all of you, one of which is Joe November. Thank you guys so much for your support. You really mean the world to us, and I look forward to reading out all your names on one of our larger program shows soon. With that, bye.
Can we go home now, please?
There we go.
We named the dog Indiana. The dog? You are named after the dog?
Got a lot of fond memories of that dog.
What did you find, Junior?
Junior? Dad?
Geez, what does it always mean? This Junior. That's his name. Henry Jones Jr.
Like Indiana.
May we go home now, please?